realizing more about my ancestry, realizing more about my indigeneity, because I knew about the maroon side from both of my grandmothers. But in getting to know my father and learning about his family and learning that I actually have Taino ancestry, which that blew my mind. I was like, I need to know more about this. All right, greetings. I'm Tammy. I am from Jamaica, live in Kingston. My name is actually Tameka A. Coley, but no one calls me that. Everybody calls me Tammy. I am currently a Cycle 4 Climate Justice Journalism Fellow with Climate Tracker Caribbean. Hey guys. So I just wanted to give you that quick intro. I have been in media for, this is gonna make me sound old. This year is gonna be my 20th year in media. I started very, very young. I started actually with what you call that now? It would have been a blog at that time, but then it transitioned into more official online media. It was called popstylegjamaica.com. I started as a fashion journalist, and that did so well that we started getting invited to events as media. And at that time, blogging was not popular. So it was a big deal for us. And, it was very exciting. So that was my foray into the field. From there, that happened when I was in about second year of UA. From there, I just started getting into more journalism events, doing a lot of research. I went and had a PR internship that I was awarded when I was going to UA. They took 2 UA students. They were supposed to take 2 UTech students. It didn't happen. So I went to Solid Agency and did an entertainment PR internship, which is where I got into doing digital media. So from there, the scope widened. And I fell in love with it. Over the years, I have been doing digital media or traditional journalism, or merging both, as I do here in this fellowship. And I've been doing that for quite a while. I started in 2006, guys, very long ago. So yeah, that's my introduction.
Okay.
Where have
Just
I worked?
yeah, just to kind of contextualize some of that too, like you mentioned, solid agency, which is um, can you talk a little bit about that for people who may not know some of the things that these people have been involved with or produced over the years?
Okay, yes, definitely. So, Solid Agency is an entertainment firm that does events, that does artist management, artist representation, tour management, road management, that kind of thing. So, it was a very big deal for me as a little young UWI student from country to get this internship. Yes, at the time when I got that internship, they did a lot of bookings. They did a lot of tour management. There was an event at the time that they routinely held called Fully Loaded. DJ Khaled used to come down for it every year. So during I think it was a 5-month internship, I was part of the planning team for Fully Loaded. Um, Bounty Killer had a birthday party annually. He was one of their artists called It's a Party. So we had to work on that. We had to promote it. We had to also be part of the event management team. We had to do like stage management, that kind of thing. Wayne Marshall was one of the artists. Who else? Movado was one of the artists, and he was just coming up in his career. So it was really exciting. I had to do a lot of interviews with them. I had to do press releases for the agency and for the artists. And also at the time, social media was just starting to pop off. So they didn't really understand it. So they brought me in and they're like, you're the young person, you take that, you run with it. At first I was annoyed because I thought, okay, they're just shoving this on me and they're not teaching me no real PR. But I really fell in love with it. So I had to create MySpace pages for the artists. I had to make Facebook groups and get them activated so that people could like win giveaways to come to the shows and stuff like that. And it got me into seeing media in a different way as well, and kind of seeing where the future of it was gonna be. And I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to merge that. So that was my little solid agency stint right there. It was tough, but I learned a lot.
All right, so tell me about your other forays now into journalism itself.
All right, so from there, I always did freelance writing. There was a magazine based in Trinidad that distributed regionally after my solid agency internship and popstylemajamaica.com that was called Cariville, and that is fashion, lifestyle, art. So I went more into the culture and lifestyle journalism. And I did that for quite a while. I also worked with Echo magazine, which is Jamaican, and that was environmental magazine here. So I did those while I was still finishing up UE. Once I graduated UE, I went directly into advertising. I worked at a company called AdMark, Advertising and Marketing Jamaica, and I was the events and below the line marketing manager there. And that was a big job for somebody who just leave college. But again, I learned a lot, ran with it, learned whole heap. I realized though that I didn't really want to stay directly in the advertising field. So I had an opportunity to apply. The Observer was looking for reporters. I applied and I got it. And I was there for 5 years. So I worked with Novia McDonald White. I was on the lifestyle desk. I occasionally did other beats for different desks, but primarily arts, culture, lifestyle, events, fashion, them kind of thing there. Of course, all of that is what comes under Novia McDonald White's department at the Jamaica Observer. So I did that, and the Observer is my longest running media relationship because I was there consistently for a number of years. Left, came back on contract, left again, came back in a different capacity when Edge 105 started, and I was working on radio in that time. So through that company, I've done different aspects of media. So I went there as digital media manager. I went there as an assistant producer on some radio shows. And then, of course, I worked there as a lifestyle reporter as well. So I got a lot of different kinds of media experience at the Jamaica Observer. And throughout the years, I've always been freelancing with different media houses in the Caribbean, in the US, like Irie Magazine in California. Who else? Complex UK. No, I've written for a lot of people. I can't remember all of them. But no, Climate Tracker. So I'm here. And Climate Tracker was my intro into like real investigative environmental journalism. And I have to say, I love it.
Interesting. I find that that tends to happen where you forget all the stuff that you've written. Quite a bit.
It's a lot.
But before we get into climate tracker and environmental stuff, let's talk a little bit about your relationship with the environment before that. What was it like? Because even though we have a start with a lot of these things when it comes to, so most of the other fellows I've talked to as well, there is a place where their journalism in the environmental space started. But I always like to think that the people who do it, they genuinely care for the environment, because that's
true.
That's where the motivation comes from to do something like this, because it's not the prettiest or sexiest beat
or easiest.
In journalism. So oftentimes it's people who genuinely care about the environment. So let's talk a little bit about that. Before, what was it like? I know you mentioned earlier you're an outdoors person, and then how did that kind of eventually lead you into saying, let me see how I can put my journalism skills to this thing that I'm very connected to?
Ooh, I like this question. It's deep, but it's not that deep. All right, so I think I would say that my relationship with the environment started when I was a little girl, because I'm not a Kingstonian. I'm from the country. I come from St. Elizabeth. St. Elizabeth, for people who don't know, outside of Jamaica, is known as the breadbasket of Jamaica. A lot of farming goes on there. Like everything that you can think of, we have it down there. And I grew up in, I guess you would say, more of the countryside part of St. Elizabeth. It's very lush, very green, lots of exotic birds and trees and plants and all of that. And that was my norm growing up. Being outside, playing, climbing the trees, picking mango, like I was very rarely inside. If I was inside, I was either reading or writing. But once the weather was good enough, I am outside. So my relationship started as a child, and I was also raised by my grandma, who she had a very strong relationship with the land as well. She was a maroon woman. She knew every plant around us. She knew different kinds of birds. So if she heard something, she could say, "Oh, that's a grass squid," or "Oh, that's this kind of bird." So I grew up with that level of understanding, and I didn't understand how special that is until now that I'm older and recognizing that that's not normal for a lot of people. So, and everything that I ate, she would say, "You need to eat this because it has these minerals and these vitamins, and this is what it does for your body," that kind of thing. So I just naturally had that understanding from her. And she just made sure to pass it on in her everyday life. If she was going to plant something, she would bring me and show me what she was doing. If she was harvesting, she would say, "Okay, this is how you pick this plant. This is what you do first. This is what you do last." So I was always being, I wouldn't say indoctrinated, but I was always being like her understudy where that is concerned. And when I went to high school, I went to boarding school, so I didn't have much of that experience with her because I wasn't at home as much. So I had that in more of my earlier years, up to 10 years old. I went to high school in, first form I was 10. And I went to Hampton School for Girls. I wasn't able to do as much outdoor stuff, but I was outside a lot still. Whenever I could take a break, I'd always go outside and just sit under a tree and just look outside, meditate, listen to the birds, just chill. At the time, I didn't know I was meditating, but I just knew that whenever I needed to take a break, it was always outdoors for me. And it's still like that today. Went through high school like that, went through UE like that. That was always my little refuge. Anytime I got overwhelmed from studying or anything like that, I knew I had to find myself outside. Or I needed to take a trip to the river, to the beach or something, and that was just the norm for me. And I've recognized over the years that my love for nature is so much a part of me that I can't tell where it started. And I didn't really think about it in terms of the environment, but more of just a living thing that we coexist with, that we are a part of, and that is a part of us. And as I, in the last 10 years of my life, realizing more about my ancestry, realizing more about my indigeneity, because I knew about the maroon side from both of my grandmothers, but in getting to know my father and learning about his family and learning that I actually have Taino ancestry, which that blew my mind. I was like, I need to know more about this. And just understanding how much nature is a part of that, that just opened a whole other world of possibilities for me. And I started to see it in a more spiritual way and even a more personal way. I started to have a relationship with the land and just with everything that is living. So it made me feel like more pained about the stuff that happens in Jamaica, but also in other parts of the world. It made me feel like I need to do something. And I thought about it and I was like, well, what am I good at doing? How can I do something? I said, well, I'm a writer. I am a good writer. I'm also good at advocating. And when I speak, people listen to me. I don't know why they listen to me, but they do. So I'm like, all right, so maybe I need to shift the focus and start talking about this. Because no one really seems to get how bad things are right now, where the environment is. It's like we're all like, oh yeah, we're going up in flames. It's not that bad. It's happening over there. It's happening over there. But I think it's because a lot of people don't see how our everyday lives are being affected, and they think it's this abstract, distant reality that other people are dealing with. Oh, Amazon is on fire, this, that. But they're not seeing how the higher temperatures here, the extended rainfall, like they're not seeing how all of that is related to climate change. They're not seeing how all these big corporations are doing things that are worsening those things. And they just feel like, oh, well, it doesn't really affect me. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm good at making things relatable. Maybe if I break this down, or maybe if I bring it back home and show people, hey, this is how it's affecting you, I'm thinking that's something that can make a difference. So that's really why. And it is because I care. I never
Yeah.
thought about it like that. But I care, and I care very, very deeply. It's something that disturbs me. If I think about it too hard, I can probably even not sleep at night.
Yeah.
So I have to really rein
Yeah.
it in sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen people get real emotional.
Yeah, man.
About it too. A lot of the
It
people I've
happens.
spoken to about it, but yeah, so it is very much a thing where you feel some kind of concern for the environment,
Yeah.
and then you look at the skills we have and say, what can I do?
Yeah.
But the thing that I always say to our fellows when I speak to them on this thing is that you can is a whole heap of information,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you said the reason, you said people don't know, and that is like the big task of our generation, of our time right now, is the breakdown. So like
True.
I don't know if you're into films and stuff nowadays. Like the things that we upload YouTube is like film breakdowns, TV series
Yeah,
breakdowns.
yeah.
Yeah,
I love them. I like to watch
yeah,
them.
exactly. Me too. But I think that our job, like the breakdown, has become the thing because attention spans have like
Oh,
dipped so much, and then
it's like here
the,
now.
the density of the information that we're dealing with when it comes to the environment, like there's heavy politics in it, there's heavy science in it, it's all this stuff that
True.
you have to find a way to, like you said, kind of make it relatable. So I
Yeah.
think that really is our job, and it's the more we can kind of key into that, like realizing that reporting, like whatever you want to say, I do. Just no say, no, for real. There's no say, the real thing is finding a way to break down. It's the breakdown. It's breaking down of this thing and then
Yeah.
making it relatable to people, because that's the disconnect that we're having right now, where so many things are happening in the environment. People don't know and they don't understand how it affects them.
Yeah. They're not seeing that link. They just feel like they're so separate from it.
Yeah,
And I think we really need to simplify it and just make it digestible, because we need to know that one, the attention spans are low. So we have to grab them fast. We have to grab them good. We have to make it memorable. So it's like a lot to consider.
I mean, it's a whole science, and I think that's the skill that we should key in on or try to become like the masters of right now, which is like, how can we do that?
Yeah.
But it is an issue. Like I spoke about it when I traveled the other day, sharing some of my work, but it is an issue. And there's no like there's no one solve to it. Like it's a
Yeah,
problem
that's true.
where you just have to know, say this is the issue. Like getting people to understand, and knowing that will give you an advantage. But outside of that, there's no like every time you
Yeah.
have to come up with something creative.
Yeah, there's a new formula
Yeah.
every single time.
Yeah.
There's no cookie cutter, because we're, as you say, we're in this tiny attention span phase. So what will work last week not going to work again next week. It's not even going to work again tomorrow, because that's stale now. So it's a lot to really take on. But I care so much about it that it doesn't feel daunting to me. I just feel like if I can make a little dent, it must help.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a mindset that we need to have, because we can't do everything, we can't change the world.
Definitely
But
not.
if you can do your part, and your part is the thing that you are passionate about, plus the place where you have skill. Like it's a Venn diagram where the thing intersect. But I guess my next question is, how did how did that process happen where you this like discovered the fellowship, but decided that, or maybe it was before that you decided, like you mentioned, I think it was that you said you wanted to see how you could put your skills to it. And then you found the fellowship, or how did that come about?
I was trying to find a way. I was wondering if I should just like start doing videos on social media. But then I thought about it and I'm like, I'm not really an authority in the space. You know, like I don't really have the credentials certain way. I feel like I need to learn more to then start talking about it. Because I can talk about it from the perspective of being an indigenous person and having that personal relationship with the land. But a lot of people are disconnected from their culture. So that may not necessarily resonate. So then I was like, okay, I could talk about it from a journalistic standpoint, but I'm not an environmental journalist, so then we kind of need to learn them skill there. So I was like, all right, going back and forth in my head about it. Um, my uncle, my mentor, he has an environmental consultancy for years. He just retired. It's called Environmental Solutions Limited, ESL. And he's done a lot of work across the region over the years. And I've always helped him, you know, like read his documents, his reports, edit them, help him put them together. And I found it very interesting, a lot of the discoveries that were coming out. So I spoke to him and I was like, what do you think? And he said, well, you love to write, you love to advocate and make videos and stuff. Maybe you should follow that inkling that you have to learn more about it and see how you can develop that into something, because the information really does need to get out there. People really don't get it, they don't know. So I said, all right, cool. And I just set the intention that I need to find a way to get into that aspect of journalism. And I never really thought about it after that. I followed Climate Tracker and everything, but I didn't really think I was going to write for them. I just wanted to stay informed. But then I saw these fellowships and things popping up. And I didn't even apply because I thought, well, you had to be an environmental writer. So I didn't try. And a couple people sent it to me and they're like, you need to apply because you don't know if it's a fellowship, you're probably going to learn things. And I was like, all right, let me give it a shot. And it actually worked. I was like, wow, okay, I feel a little bit like an imposter. But we're going to figure it out. And I have to say, it's been really good because there have been like the webinars, and I really love them because you learn a lot. You don't feel like people talking over your head and you can't relate, and it's just ways how to apply it to the skills you already have, how you already communicate, how to make it relevant, how to make it memorable. And I'm like, all right, cool, this makes sense. And it feels like a community as well. It doesn't feel, at first I was very skeptical because I was like, is this a business? Is this a media entity that really cares? Or is it because this is a trending topic right now? Somebody just decides, say, all right, we're going to write about the environment. We'll get a lot of grants, that kind of thing. So I was skeptical at first. But then I realized that everybody cares. Everybody within the Climate Tracker family is invested, really cares, wants to make that difference. So I said, all right, I'm at my place. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I mean, it's one of the things that I feel like I end up talking about is with every interview on the podcast. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where the community, and it's something that's gonna follow you. You know, even when you leave, even if you end up doing something else.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that makes it comfortable, especially the webinars and the learning processes, that you're dealing with other journalists, even though you're not an environmental journalist.
Yeah.
They still have that. There's still that respect and acknowledgement of the skill.
Yeah.
And then I think it just translates easy from there. So they get that you're a journalist and know how to talk to you.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of what also I think some of the subjects that you learn about the Escazú agreement,
Yeah.
like the Paris agreement, those things are essential to like the foundation of your understanding for how you
Definitely. And it opens up your mind to see things in like new ways and see how things affect where you are as well.
And see how things are unfair, because
Definitely.
when I first did, because I was the first, I
I
was one of the
remember
first,
seeing
one of
that.
the first police to
You were
start
the
it.
first Jamaican I
Yeah,
recognized in it.
on
And I
it.
was like,
Yeah,
oh, they take us too.
yeah. So when I learning about all that stuff, the Paris Agreement, SSU Agreement, all that stuff really helped me to put into context what was happening. And I think once you have that foundation, it's you start to feel less like an imposter, because I definitely went into it with that
Yeah,
feeling as well. But
yeah,
I
true.
think with just a contextualization of the entire like this, because this discussion about the environment and what we're supposed to do, or what the different countries are supposed to do, is like it's been happening for a long time,
A
like before
long
Nuka were
time.
born. So
Yeah,
it's not new. It's just that it's we just have to pick up the button now and
exactly.
try to figure it out. But tell me a little bit about your stories, the choice you made, like how you ended up making the choice to cover the stories that you did, and then we can go into detail about one of the stories that you the story that you won the award for. So congrats, by the way.
Thank you. I was so shocked. And I was so proud of myself. I was like, oh my God, I don't feel like an imposter anymore. I want something. How did I choose my stories? I think for me, I went into the fellowship with a very clear idea of how I wanted to approach environmental reporting because I am very passionate about culture. I'm very passionate about nature. I know that the two are inextricably linked. That kind of level of intertwining between nature and culture, we don't think about it. It's so automatic. It's like breathing. We don't even think about it. But that is the reason why we should care about it. Because everything that happens with the environment in a negative way shifts the culture in some way. It has to. Because the people are the culture. And you live in the environment. So it must affect you. And I thought to myself, okay, that's my area of expertise. That is my area of passion. And because of that, and because of that and because I have the background that I do in my upbringing of just having that natural connection to it, I just saw that link immediately. I was like, okay, I don't think I've seen anybody approach it from that angle. So I'm going to look at it in that way. And I feel like that is a good way to make people understand how these things are directly affecting them. And I find that everywhere in the world, the indigenous peoples have the most knowledge of the environment because they have been custodians over the years. But nobody's listening to them. They have that expertise, they have all the ideas, they've been doing things that have been working, they're able to spot things long before they happen, but nobody now listen to them. And I'm like, that Jamaica is not separate from that idea. That happens here. Even the fact that Rastas have been championing ital food for decades, and now being vegan is like this global health trend. And nobody is remembering that people thought they were crazy when they were talking about these things. And Rasta is something that originated here. So I'm thinking to myself, we have that very strong, very impactful culture. The indigeneity is tied into it because we have that Maroon link, we have that Rastafari link, and now we have Taino descendants who are now resurfacing and saying, hey, we're here too. We have this knowledge. We want to be part of the conversation. And I think to myself, but this is not separate. All of this is happening. All of these people are having these experiences with the environment. They understand how it affects things, how it shifts culture because it affects their rituals and their lives, their daily lives directly. But nobody is talking about it. So I was like, all right, I have connections to all three communities because I have a lot of Rasta in my family. I have a lot of Maroon in my family, and then I'm learning now about the Taino side of it. So I said, all right, I represent this intersection here. I know that there are other people who are some way in some part of those sects. And I'm just thinking to myself, We need to hear their voices. Everybody tries to drown these voices, but these are the voices we need to bring forward because they know what's up. And we can learn a lot from them about how to protect the environment and how to protect ourselves within the environment. So I said, all right, I'm gonna highlight that. I'm also going to use the opportunity to, since I am big on advocacy, to find the people who are very impacted but not being listened to. So I did I did two stories from the indigenous perspective. I did one from the perspective of the deaf community in Jamaica because it just came to me that I'd never really heard anything about the deaf community. I know that it's a large community. I know that things must affect them differently if you can't hear, but it's not something I really see in mainstream media. And I was just thinking, okay, well, if there is like a sudden evacuation, if you can't hear, you don't know what's going on, you kind of have to just be watching people and trying to figure it out. When I think about it, we don't have emergency text lines for disasters and stuff like that. So if everything is about calling a line, then they're never going to know. So I'm like, all right, well, I need to talk to deaf people, definitely. And I need to talk to indigenous people. So I chose my stories from the perspective of whose voices do we not hear and how can their perspectives help the average person to get how serious this thing is. So that is how I really tried to approach every topic that I chose for the fellowship. And my most read story is actually the first one I thought of, which is No Climate Resilience Plans Without Us, say Jamaica's Indigenous Peoples. And I focused on the Scots Hall Maroon community. I focused on Rastafari, Indigenous Village, and on White Marl ancestral grounds that represents the Taino community. And then I brought in their voices, spoke to them. The first story is what I thought of. The second story kind of emerged from the first story because in speaking to them about those things, I started to see the trend of how it is affecting their mental health and how it is impacting their youth and how they have to be moving out of these communities, changing their jobs, that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, this is another story. It's basically writing itself. So yeah, that's how I chose the stories. And out of all of the stories, I didn't know that that would be the one people gravitated to the most. But I like that because that's what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to hear from the people who not being spoken to. So yeah.
All right, so just a couple more questions, but tell me a bit about the experience of gathering the like behind the scenes, right? So the people where you talk to, maybe struggles where you face or challenges,
Yeah.
and maybe conflicts. What was it like talking to some of the people, finding out the things that you found out, and how those things shaped the story?
So I will say, let me start with people who I spoke to. In the Taino community, I spoke with a lady named Mrs. Levy. She is not actually a part of the Taino community, but her family has a school that is right by the ancestral ground. She realized that the government stopped taking care of it, and she knows that it's Taino ground. She knows the symbolism of it, and she just thought it was a shame that nobody was doing anything with it. And her school is right there, so she and her family decided, okay, we will start to take care of the ancestral grounds. Over the years, when the Jamaican Taino community started to resurface and figure out what was happening and say, okay, how can we get involved and start taking care of the space? We made that connection with her. So she came to mind right away. I went there. We had a ritual at the ancestral grounds right after Hurricane Beryl passed. And she was there showing us the damage, walking us through the space, and just kind of explaining just different impacts to the space over the last like 5 years based on climate change. And it was so alarming to me. I was like, all right, I have to talk about this. So I wanted to not just speak from that perspective because then it would be biased because I'm part of the community, I'm there, I see it. So then this looks like this big catastrophe that we have to discuss. So I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure other indigenous communities must have similar impacts that they're dealing with. So I wanted to represent the different sectors here. So I reached out to First Man from Rastafari Indigenous Village and I spoke with him and I reached out to two people from the Scotts Hall Maroon community. I reached out to Miss Jackie and to Didi Livity. They are members of the community and they're, like custodians and they usually speak on behalf of the community. So I asked them to point me in the direction of people who were willing to speak. A lot of them never really want to be on camera or documented, but they were willing to share the information. So I spoke to the people who have no problem being front facing and they would basically relay what everyone else is saying. And I also spoke to a young farmer from Scotts Hall. That conversation was very eye-opening for me because he was the one who, I mean, while I spoke with Miss Jackie and Diddy and they were saying, the road has been damaged, the river has dried up, and they were listing all these things and showing how it affects just the community and the people. Him being as young as he is and explaining what he sees and how many of his peers have now moved to Kingston and stopped farming and all of that. And I'm just like, when did this happen? And he's like, oh, that happened in the last 2 years. I was like, that's crazy. He's like, they used to be thriving farmers. They cannot make a living anymore. They had to move. I'm literally one of maybe 5 that's left out here. And the rest of them are losing the drive because they can't predict the environment anymore to be able to successfully make a living from farming. And that just shook me, So the information gathering process, boy, it was a lot of work. I had to talk to a lot of people. I was on the phone a lot. I read a whole heap of things. I went through hours and hours and hours of voice notes. And all of these stories were super long and I had to be like, all right, I have a limit. I have to cut it. But how do I cut it and still say what I need to say? It was a lot. Those were challenges. People not wanting to, people saying like really key things and not wanting to have their name stated or be on camera or, those were challenges as well because I'd be like, this would be so much more potent if we could have tell them who tell me. But you have to find ways around that and still get the message across. So I tried my best with that.
Awesome. So, oftentimes after the fellows, because the fellowship is done now.
Yeah.
Oftentimes after the fellows finish, um, they go on to continue to use what they learned to be, environmental journalists. Some of them don't. It's for some it's a crash course.
Yeah.
So that if they want to, because some of them work in newsrooms.
Yeah.
So within newsrooms, especially locally in the Caribbean and stuff like, our newsrooms are small. We don't have climate change desks.
No, we don't.
What happens is that they become equipped. So even if they don't become environmental journalists per se, they'll be more equipped to do a story here and there.
Yeah.
But it seems like something that we can look forward to more focused, I guess, attention.
Definitely.
From you.
Definitely.
So you'll be doing more stories and stuff like that, right?
100%, because I feel like the more I learn is the more I realize that I need to learn. The more information I get is the more I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more to know. There's so much more to tell people. And I just feel like I have a duty to share it. I feel like there's no reason why I would have the ability to tell a story in such a relatable way and just sit down on it and not use it, especially for something important like this. I would feel so bad if I just sat down and watched everything crash and burn. That would bother me. I would feel very guilty about that. So right now, I have a fledgling media storytelling thing that I'm working on. It's called Rights and Culture. And I want to focus on culture and climate and, everything that comes with that. from the Jamaican and Caribbean context. So far, it has been going well, and I plan to put whole heap more muscle, whole heap more work into it. I have a lot more ideas for it now that I've done this fellowship as well. And because I was going around gathering information, people are finding me and saying, "Hey, I have more news for you." So, like it's opened more than a window. It's opened a big door. And I feel like this is the direction I need to be going in right now. I used to focus a lot on culture and mental health, and I still do care about mental health, but I also now see where there is no good mental health without having an environment to help you balance it. So I feel like that is now the priority for me. And I just know that I'm going to have a lot more to unearth about it.
Okay, awesome. So tell people where they can find you, where they can tune into Right Sound Culture stories.
You can find me. I'm on Instagram at Tamisansai. That's TamiTsansai. That's my personal page. And then Right Sound Culture is WRITESANDKULCHA. So it's not culture, it's culture. Just like how we talk. So the writing is the rights, and the culture is what we're focusing on. So you can just look up Rights and Culture, look up Tamisansai, you'll find me. I'm pretty responsive. So yeah, link up.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.